I only have 5 slides. But the thing I want you to think about, the slide that I am not going to show you, how many people remember Tony Montemurano's slide this morning where he showed the globe, if you will, and the circuits and the data centers and the field offices and the field commands and all that stuff, right? Y'all remember that slide? How many were asleep during that slide? All right. So that's my world. Everything that was on that slide is my domain that I have to operate in. Okay? So the one thing I have to ask of you is when you come in to see us to talk about the opportunities that the other folks are going to show you on their slides, understand our domain. Understand how we do business. Understand how your product adds value in our space. You come and tell us how to use your capability in our areas. It's the only way it'll work. If you come in and you try to sell me on widget XYZ, and you want to cite a scenario where you used it in industry, I will listen attentively and I will zero my mind out. I will be singing la, la, la in the back of my head, because what you did in industry, 9 times out of 10, will not apply in my space. We tend to break capability that works in industry. I've seen it time and time again over the years. That's not a brag or anything. That's just the reality of the world we operate in. And so you need to come in and tell us how best to leverage your capability in our space by saying, you know, you've got this, you do enterprise email. You're supporting email for 1.8 million people on the unclassified network right now, every single day. If you take my tool and you put it in here, I can deliver your email for you faster. I'm just making that up. But be to that level of detail, understand our space, and then understand and help us understand how leveraging your capability makes us faster, better, more secure, more resilient, more prone to supporting whatever the warfighter needs at the point and time he needs it, wherever he needs it on a global basis. Because at the end of the day, that's my mission, is I've got to support the warfighter wherever that individual is at. If it's in Afghanistan, if it's in Iraq, if it's in Kuwait, if it's in PACOM, if it's in the United States, wherever they are, that's our mission space. And so I need y'all to tell us how best to leverage your capability. If you leave it to me, I'll screw it up. Okay, is that fair enough? How many people are asleep now? It's that southern way of talking. Okay. So, got to show you the org slide here, if nothing else, just to kind of give you a framework to understand the mission space. Because I'm not going to show you any slides and talk to you about any opportunities, because I'm going to leave that up to my folks to do that, because they'll be able to talk in more detail. But I run the Ops Center. Basically, anything and everything that the agency has out in the field today is operated and managed by somebody within the organization, okay? The boxes you see to the left of the slide there, the divisions on the sideline, those are just organizations that help the care and feeding of the organization at large, okay? So there's some specific things in there that is finance, it's people, it's logistics, it's contracts, it's enterprise engineering, end-to-end engineering, modeling and simulation, those sorts of things. So those are facilitating the day-to-day operation of the organization. The Infrastructure Directorate, Charles Osborne will get up and he'll talk about the infrastructure. So when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about transport, we're talking about satellites, we're talking about gateways, basically whatever it's required to sustain and optimize the DISA infrastructure. So Charles will get up and he'll talk about that. Services Directorate, comments were made earlier about cloud moving over to Ops Center. So within the Services Directorate, Jason Martin will get up and he'll talk about how we deliver enterprise services to the warfighter, as well as how do we do cloud computing from an enterprise perspective. So if it has something to do with computing at scale, applications, et cetera, as an enterprise capability, then that capability will reside within Jason Martin's area within the Services Directorate. The Cyber Ops Directorate is basically the organization that does the 24/7 operating of the agency's infrastructure. Think the DISA, think any capability that goes on, any operations that are going on, all of that works through the cyber operations section of the organization. So any type of named operation that's going on, any sort of satellite issues going on, anything globally gets filtered through the cyber ops folks. And then the NLCC, I can tell you about that, but probably not, because then we'd have to deny everything I just said. So a lot of the special missions the agency has all falls within that group. Okay, so a couple of major changes. I want to talk about things that have shifted, if you will, since last year's forecast industry. A lot of talk about the cyber defense strategy that's coming out, and within the agency, what is the agency's strategy for implementing cyber across the agency so that we come at it as a unified organization as opposed to coming up with multiple different ways of defining and implementing cyber. Also, we implemented just this last summer in July, we stood up the second operations center, went live out at Ogden at our data center. So if you go out to Hill Air Force Base, DISA really has two presence now out there in the same building. We have one of our computing centers there, as well as our Global Operations Center West. So now, at any point in time, 24/7, I can fail the management of the DISA over between either site, regardless of what may be happening worldwide, and the DISA will continue to operate and be managed from an enterprise perspective. Okay, from a services perspective, we are now well along the way of optimizing our computing environment from the data center side of the house, what we call the ecosystem. That'll be going on through year 2020. It is basically where we have basically moved away from independent data centers, which you may recall as, we referred to them as DECs, Defense Enterprise Computing Center, and we went to a single ecosystem concept where you have one chain of command that manages all the data centers within the agency. I didn't do that. It's, somebody put a light up here. I'm not working off script, so it doesn't help me none. So anyway, so ecosystem is well along its way. We've gone through and restructured the organization at large. We've also now gone through and are reworked all the contracts across the whole entire ecosystem so that now we have not only restructured the organization, we've realigned manpower, but now we're also now shifting the contractor requirements to coincide with how we're operating as a single ecosystem. We also talked about the cloud activity moving from underneath Mr. Timmerman over to the ops side, so that now within Mr. Martin's organization, we not only have the ecosystem, but we also have all of the cloud computing that the agency has responsibility for, specifically MilCloud 2 being the first on-prem cloud capability, and we're up and running with that right now. Infrastructure Directorate, Mr. Osborne will get up and he'll talk about a variety of things. But change-wise, a couple of the capabilities that are within his organization today have either left or they will be leaving. It's no reflection on Charles. Charles is actually a good guy. But somebody made some decisions along the way, and so we're in the process of executing. M&IS, multinational information sharing, think coalition capability, that moved over to the Air Force. That took effect 1 October of this year. We're still in I'll call it a support role for the Air Force for that capability. So as they are standing it up within the Air Force base, we're facilitating that stand up and in any way we can in terms of expertise and capability. But that did take place on 1 October. ComSatcom, to include the Iridium piece of the puzzle, will be moving to the Air Force, to AF Space specifically. Right now, that's looking to take place probably in the December timeframe, but that's subject to some MOAs that are still in the final stages of development. But that will be effective in FY19, and then that will go to address some NDA language that came out, I think it's in 18, in 18. Okay. Now then, a couple of things. This is just a recap of what we talked about before, but it'll kind of help you set your mind as each of the individuals get up and they talk about their piece of the puzzle. Then you'll have a way to think about what it is they're going to be talking about. Infrastructure, Charles will get up and he'll talking about the DISA and how we optimize it, manage it, if you will. And from a transport perspective, think every type of transport you can. Terrestrial, even undersea cables, we do some of that now, satellite, as well as the gateways across the department. Okay, on the services side, Jason will get up, he'll talk about optimizing and being able to provide critical enterprise services across the department, and then the computing ecosystem and anything tied to cloud. And then we've got on the cyberspace ops, really talking about all the operational aspects of the agency across the globe to include support the combatant commanders on site, if you will, as well as we also manage the CSSP program for the agency and mission partners across the department. Right now we do approximately 140, give or take, Scott, 154 individual CSSP activities underway. And then we're also tied in directly with GFHQ, Doden, and Cyber. Okay, that's my last slide. Comments, questions before the folks get up to say the things you really want to hear about?
Mr. Bennett.
Yes, Jim.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
Good.
How much bandwidth is being used to send out software patches and antivirus updates? Are the size and frequency of patches becoming a bandwidth issue for remote users?
No. Y'all thought I was thinking deep thoughts, weren't you?
We have another.
No, the bigger problem I see with patches and updates going out globally is volume, and I don't mean in terms of size. I'll use infrastructure as an exemplar. I get a patch that has to go out to, let's just say, a Cisco router. One patch, I may have 1,000 devices that have to be patched. Sometimes the patch requires hands-on to actually do the work. So think about having to go to 1,000 locations instantaneously at one time. So it's not the size of the patch, it's the breadth and the scale that we have to operate, which goes back to my comment earlier about you got to understand the operational environment that we deal in. We break most things that industry tends to think about. Scale is one of those things.
Please elaborate on where in the United States Air Force the MNIS was transferred.
SAF AA. Next question. Anybody know what SAF-AA is? Okay, acquisition arm of the Air Force. John Wilcox, I believe it was. Is it Wilcox? Huh? Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, John Salvatore, excuse me, runs the organization. It fell within that group.
What solution or solutions is DISA considering for enterprise API management?
Where's Steve Wallace when you need him? I don't have a good answer to that, and I can't tap dance. But find Steve Wallace when he comes in, whoever asks the question. Because that'll be more on the development side of the house in terms of how we manage APIs.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. That was your final question.
Okay. All right. All these other folks are going to get up, ask them the really hard questions. Please take to heart my comment about understanding our space. If you come in and you try and give us a typical vendor pitch, it doesn't help us. And we can't make good decisions if we can't translate what your capability can do within our space. It's too problematic. Thank you.